Hello and welcome to The Art of Climate Change. This is a webinar with the acclaimed US artist Zaria Forman. Welcome, Zaria. This is organised by Selwyn College, Cambridge. My name is Lynn Dicks. I am a fellow of Selwyn College and I'm a university professor of ecology in the Department of Zoology. So before we start, I wanted to say a few words about the incredible drawing that's been the catalyst for this event. It's called the Lincoln Sea. It's a magnificent and huge pastel drawing that illustrates how global warming is impacting on our ecosystem. In this case, on the glaciers in the Lincoln Sea. And if you're wondering where the Lincoln Sea is, it's the vast stretch of water in the Arctic Ocean that stretches from Cape Columbia in Canada in the west to Cape Morris Jesup in Greenland in the east. It used to be covered in sea ice throughout the year, some of the thickest, in fact, in the Arctic Ocean. But as Zaria's artwork shows, this is no longer the case. The drawing, the Lincoln Sea, was on display at the Scott Polar Museum here in Cambridge earlier this year. And we're now delighted to be able to show it at Selwyn College for the next 12 months or so. We're grateful to one of our alumni, Kelvin Chu, who owns and has lent us this artwork, for giving audiences in Cambridge the opportunity to see the Lincoln Sea and to discuss what it tells us about what is happening with our climate. It really is amazing if you get a chance to see it. So I'm absolutely delighted this evening to introduce you to its artist, Zaria Forman. Zaria travels to remote regions of the world to collect images and inspiration for her work, and her work is exhibited worldwide. She's going to talk to us about how she's flown with NASA on several Operation IceBridge missions, Antarctica, Greenland, and Arctic Canada. She's featured on a number of television outlets like CNN and the BBC. She's even delivered a TED talk about her work. And also Zaria curated the first ever permanent polar art exhibition aboard Lindblad Expeditions National Geographic Endurance. So her works have appeared in publications and in lots of places. And currently, Zaria is working and residing in upstate New York, where she's joining us from this evening or this afternoon for you, Zaria, and represented by the Winston Vaster Fine Arts in New York and Seattle. So welcome, Zaria. It's a real pleasure to have you. I'm going to hand over to Zaria to talk to us about her work and the things she's been doing. As we are talking, you're very welcome to put questions in the chat for the audience, and at the end of Zaria talking to us, there'll be a chance to ask those questions. So please, if you have questions about things you're seeing or things that Zaria says, just write us a note in the chat. Okay, so over to you, Zaria. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Lynn. Thank you for that lovely introduction, and thank you to everyone who is here this evening to take a look at my work and learn a little bit more. I really appreciate you coming. For the last, let's see, I think it's like 16 years now, my work has focused on conveying the urgency of climate change. And in order to do that, I've traveled to really remote places where ice is melting and also where sea levels are rising. And I actually grew up spending a lot of time outdoors in like really far-flung landscapes. And those experiences really instilled in me a deep love of landscape. And when you love something, you want to protect it, right? So by making these really large-scale compositions, these large-scale drawings, I hope to offer viewers a chance to connect emotionally with places that they might not have, that you might not have the chance to actually visit in person. And by showing you the beauty of these places, I hope to inspire you to want to protect and preserve them. I'm going to dive right in from there to my NASA series of work, since that is the body of work that the piece you have there at the college is a part of. And, you know, it's so special for me to be able, and it's unusual for me to be able to give a talk to people that are actually getting to see the work. You know, I can only make about 10 pieces a year, if that. And so there's not a ton out there. I mean, you're going to see a lot in this talk because I've been working for many years now, but so it is rare that I get to speak to an audience that gets to see my work in person and they're not just looking at it up on the projector. So yeah, it just makes me excited that you get to like really see the texture. I always have to, you know, give a lot of reminders that what you're looking at are not photographs, that they are drawings, handmade with soft pastel on paper. because they do, when you're just looking at a photograph, it looks like it's just a photograph of the landscape. It's not, but yeah, anyway, when you get to see it in person, you see that it's not. So I'm happy that you're all there and getting to experience it. So yeah, I guess it was a couple of years ago, back in 2016, I got an email in my inbox saying, "Hi, this is NASA. We would love for you to come fly with us over the Arctic and Antarctica." And love NASA. And I was like, this has to be a hoax. This can't be real. But I called the phone number, and the guy on the phone sounded like he had this like deep radio voice. And I was like, this is definitely not real. But over the course of the next few months, I followed along with instructions, and we went from one thing to the next. And then 6 months later, I found myself flying down to Argentina, or to Chile, sorry, Punta Arenas, the very bottom of Chile, to meet this NASA science team, and looked around and realized, okay, these are scientists. This is definitely NASA. You know, I just didn't really understand why they wanted me as an artist to come along on these missions. So let me just explain what the mission was. It's called Operation IceBridge, and it's an airborne science mission that's been mapping changes in ice at both poles for over a decade now. And I had the opportunity to join some of their flights over Antarctica, Greenland, and also parts of Arctic Canada. So this is the first team that I joined for Operation IceBridge, and that aircraft was equipped with a whole suite of instruments. There's lasers, radars, an infrared sensor, digital photography, and something called a gravimeter, which measures gravity. They joked about it housing Einstein's brain, which obviously wasn't the case. You can keep scrolling through as I talk. So the next series of drawings that you'll see are all from this NASA series. So yeah, the flights were about 12 hours on average. So it was a lot of time in the air, very dehydrating, but super exciting. And we flew only about 1,500 feet above sea ice, glaciers, mountain ranges. And, you know, I think for most of us, these polar ice sheets are just like giant white spots on a map, right? And often it actually looked like that to me, like looking out the aircraft window. I had a lot of time just sitting in the cockpit, looking out the windows with the pilots, shooting pictures from there. But this IceBridge team of scientists and engineers know that there is this very rapid change that's occurring just beneath the surface of the ice. It's this very complex interplay of freshwater rivers, valleys of bedrock, and warmer ocean waters that are eating away at our glaciers from underneath. As our climate changes, ice melt is really speeding up. The rate at which all of the ice in Antarctica that has been shedding has tripled just in the past decade. And these IceBridge missions are collecting really critical information that can tell us how this ice loss is occurring and what these changes mean for sea level rise and also coastal communities around the world. So some of these drawings in this series were born from photographs that I took out the window of the NASA flying laboratory. But others, like this one that you're looking at right now, came from material that came from a camera that they fixed to the very belly at the bottom of the plane that shoots images downward every couple of seconds. So in a way, these drawings represent the body of evidence that help scientists understand how climate change is affecting our planet. And, you know, my proximity to the NASA scientists really allowed me to ask endless questions. Here you get to see me, this is not from the NASA series, but you just get to see me drawing a piece in a time lapse. So you get to kind of see how it works. So maybe go back and just let that play out till the end. If it's actually playing properly. It looks like it is from my end. So yeah, I just had all this time that I could just ask them endless questions about what they were seeing and what they were measuring. And that experience really informed and elevated my own practice of observing ice. And in turn, I think my drawing technique really evolved towards a heightened kind of precision and nuance. You know, like unlike a straight on iceberg or glacier, like you see in this drawing, this piece that I'm working on, the images that you saw from the NASA series weren't like immediately recognizable, right? They look kind of abstract. And so I felt like I really needed to like draw people in and get them closer to these moments of of ice melt and these moments of science that they are studying to kind of understand it and gain a more like a deeper emotional connection with these places and facilitate kind of both this intimacy and awe at the same time. So I did make a film. I don't know if I put it, maybe I didn't put it in here, but I used, I made a film as part of the series that stitched together all of the images that I had, I basically took like 120 images from that camera that was strapped to the belly of the plane that were all in succession. And I stitched them together and made the film move across it as if you were getting the exact same view as I was out the window. So you get to see the landscape move over time and moving at the same speed that the plane was flying. So that was part of the series as well. This is one of the images from that NASA series. Both of those are actually all the aerial shots that you see from above are from that. This is a glacier lake. That's a glacier. So I'll tell you a bit about my process. It always starts by traveling to these places at the forefront of climate change. And once I'm on site, so in the NASA series, once I was in the aircraft and above looking down at the ice, but otherwise I'm usually like a little bit more up close and personal with the ice. I'll take thousands of photographs and I take video as well. And sometimes I collect sound with some recording equipment. And I also have to really remember on these trips to put my equipment down and just really soak it up with my eyes, experience it with my whole self, my being. Because when I get back to the studio, using both my memory of the experience and the images that I take are equally important. So I think it really makes a difference when I actually get to experience the landscape personally with myself. I've tried drawing from other people's images when I haven't been to a place yet, and it just never really comes out with the same amount of like emotional connectedness, maybe. It's hard to explain. So anyway, I get back to the studio. I begin this really long process of editing all the photos down. I tend to sometimes just jump straight into the one piece that I know I'm going to draw. Like there's always a moment on each trip where I just go, wow, it's like the light hits the ice the perfect way. And it just is like one of those, what me and my family calls, oh my God moments, where it's just stunning. And I just know I'm going to make a drawing. And so sometimes when I get home, I just jump straight to that imagery and I just to get started and just to get my hands wet or dry, because this pastel is dry, into the work. And then I'll move back after that first piece and I do this long process of editing. And then when I have the images that I know I want to draw, I'll start with just a really simple pencil sketch. Sometimes I use a projector now just to do like the outlines of the iceberg, just to have it be a quicker process. I used to do it freehand and it just takes a lot longer. And after the simple pencil sketch, I jump in pretty quickly with a pigment and I layer it onto the paper with my hands. I don't really use any tools, generally just my fingers and my palms. So I'll smudge around a base layer to get just a full color onto the paper. And then I use sharp shards that sometimes I'll create by breaking the chunks of pastel with a push pin or a knife. And I'll use those sharp edges to create the finer details on top of the base layer. Yeah, you can skip the video again because I think, yeah, there's another NASA. These are more NASA images. Oh yeah, going back to the beginning. Okay, cool. It's okay to go backwards. They're not in any specific order at that point. Yeah, so I tend to, work kind of straight from my memory and from the images. Sometimes I will change the landscape just a tiny bit, like maybe 5%. Like if the sky is blue and I wanted more of a moody sky, I'll make it gray. Or if the shape of the iceberg, I just want to round it out just a little bit to create a better composition visually, then I'll do that. But I would say like 99, maybe even 99% of the time, I'm really sticking to the exact scene that I witnessed because I want to stay true to that landscape that actually existed at that point in time, right? But the point of the work is to offer viewers a chance to experience these places that are at the forefront of climate change, that are generally far away from most of our everyday lives. Nobody lives in Antarctica unless you're a scientist. And even then you're only there for the summertime. Generally there's maybe 50, 100 people that stay over winter, and there are people that live in the Arctic. There are people that have been living there for forever. But most of us don't spend time there. And even though most of us, unfortunately, are getting to experience different kinds of climate change in our backyard, the kinds that I am showing with my work are very remote and hard to get to. And so I want to use these opportunities I've been given to really try and recreate these places and the experiences that I have. And that's one reason why I work on such a large scale. I just want to allow you an opportunity to feel like you have been transported to that place in time. And just something to think about too, like especially with the ice and of course the water like this, it doesn't look the same at all by the time I'm finished with the drawing. Even sometimes by the time I'm done clicking the photo or the moment's over, the light has moved. And so, time is just a very important element in my work that really weaves through in and out in so many different ways. The time it takes the glacier to build, which can be millions of years, the time it takes to collapse, which we don't always know the answer to. We're still studying that. The one instant that I experience the landscape, and then the weeks and months that it takes me to physically and metaphorically draw out these moments, and then the time that we have to kind of turn this ship around to start living sustainably on this earth in a way that does not harm the planet and ultimately ourselves. So yeah, I don't know. Have I talked enough? Can we open it up to questions now?
Thank you so much, Zaria. Yeah, I think we could open it up to questions now. Yeah. So the people who are watching, I hope you've been enjoying the amazing set of pictures that Zaria shared with us, and including at the beginning we saw the Lincoln Sea, which we've got in Selwyn at the moment. Really worth looking at. If people have questions, I think you can write them into the chat. I'm going to take my chair privilege and start with one of mine, if that's okay. So, but in the course of what you just said, Zaria, you said you were talking about the sound of the ice scapes. I guess you can only hear them from some of the places you've been, because when you're in a plane, you don't hear the sounds. But I'd love to hear more about that. What do these ice scapes sound like, and how does that influence your work?
I love this question because it is often the most surprising thing. And for me, at least, the first time visiting Antarctica and Greenland, actually, that was the first ice I ever saw. I was not expecting it. Nobody told me about it. And it is one of the most beautiful things about these landscapes. They are, as glaciers build, it's basically just snow on snow on snow on snow for years and years and years and years. And then it gets compressed and it gets compressed and it gets compressed. And so little air bubbles end up getting trapped inside of the glaciers. And those air bubbles are actually a treasure trove for scientists. So when we dig down and find ice cores to try to learn about the atmosphere of the air, how much carbon dioxide and methane were in the air from like 2 million years ago. If you have an ice core sample that's 2 million years, they've found air bubbles that they've measured to be that old, because they can measure the quality of and a lot of things inside those tiny little air bubbles. So it's a really cool little treasure trove on the one hand, and one that we still are using. And then this magical thing happens when you're there, because glacier, iceberg chunks break off the glacier and they land in the water, and then they start to melt, which is normal. Like that happens. Obviously, it's happening at a more alarming and faster rate now than ever before. But when you are around these ice chunks, and especially when there's water kind of lapping up against them, maybe it's by a shore, or even if they're floating in the water, you hear these little bubbles popping open. So it's this ancient air meeting new air. And this is the sound recording that I made, and that I've had in a couple of my exhibitions, because I just find it so beautiful and satisfying. Scientists refer to it as ice krispies because it really just has this like pop crackle. I'm not even like an ASMR person, but it's just like so satisfying. And yeah, you hear it popping and crackling, and it's just really, really beautiful. I highly recommend. I have it up on SoundCloud. If you search like Zaria Forman SoundCloud Ice Krispies, you'll probably find it and you can hear it. It's really beautiful. I highly recommend. It's there to download for free for anyone who wants it. So yeah, and I realized too, I forgot to say like the most important thing about my work. So I'll just add this here, which is that and maybe even this ice sound kind of leads us into it. It's the reason why I want to transport you to these places and make you fall in love with them as I have is because it's impossible not to fall in love with them when you see the beauty, right? And you always want to protect something that you love. And art has this really special ability to tap into our emotions. That's something that's actually been scientifically proven. And so I use art because I feel like it's my sharpest tool in my toolbox to like get at people's emotions. And we as human beings take action and make decisions based on our emotions more than anything else. That is also scientifically, psychology has proven that to us. And so when I make these drawings, I'm trying to create an emotional connectedness to help people then step forward and take action to protect and preserve these places. Okay, let's go on to the next question.
Thank you. Yeah, so we have a question from Karen, which is why is pastel your medium of choice? Does it let you achieve particular effects, or is it better than oil, for example, or is it because you like to work directly with your hands?
More the latter. Yeah, it's definitely not better than any other medium. I always get the question like, why drawing instead of photography? Like it just, if it looks the same, why are you spending all these hours in the studio? It's like, pastel has just always been my medium of choice. I have tried oil painting and I wish I could get into it, and I will continue to try every few years because it would make my life a lot easier for a lot of reasons. But I have just always been in love with charcoal and pastel ever since I was young. I do really love the tactile sense. It's like simple. I mean, what I do is not simple, obviously, but it is in a way. It's not, there's only so much you can layer. And I actually use a really smooth paper, which is not what typical pastel artists would want, because it doesn't have much tooth and it can't hold a lot of pigment. But the reason why I like that is because a couple of reasons. The more toothy paper has like kind of like an elephant skinny surface, and there's all these grooves, and that allows you to absorb more pastel. But those grooves kind of get in the way of doing really fine details, and I really obviously am obsessed with doing the finer details. As I continue to age and do more work, it's gotten more and more and more detailed. So I really like this smooth paper because I can do those details. But the other thing is that it allows me to not obsess. Like I just have to kind of get it right first. There's not a lot of reworking I can do. I don't really erase. Like if anything really bad happens, I will erase, but it's very rare. Like I actually had a sort of defunct piece of pastel the other day, and it had some waxy stuff in it. It made these marks in a very obvious place in the drawing I'm working on right now. And I'm like, shoot, I got to fix that. I don't even have an eraser in my house. So I have to go out and buy one. So that just tells you like how infrequently I sort of take back and try to start again. So it's kind of nice because it allows me to just like know when I'm done. I can't obsess. I'm just like, it's done when it's done. And it's not layers upon layers upon layers, or like a whole process of things. Like I tried printmaking in college and I just couldn't handle all the steps that it took to get from point A to point B to what I, was envisioning in my mind. So I like that about it. It's just, you make a mark on the paper and there it is. You smudge it around, move it around with my fingers, and it's that. There's nothing else that needs to be done.
I think you must do it in a particularly special way, though. I don't think it would look like that if some of us smudged it on the. In the chat from. We have a comment from Dave in the chat. Thank you, Dave. And it's a thank you for outlining your theory of change just now, which is how art can lead to changing inner values and decisions and how we live. That was the question he was going to ask. So you preempted his question.
I did. Yeah, thank you.
Another question has come in. Would you describe your work as environmental art? Should we look at environmental art as being distinct from other art, or just another facet of art?
I mean, I see it as just another facet of art. I just like personally feel a responsibility as an artist and just as a human on this earth to put my efforts towards something that can be a positive change in the earth, on the planet, and to the people and the living beings on it in whatever way possible. And I am just very connected to the earth. Like that is just something I love so much. Landscapes are really dear to me, and so that's where I put my focus. And I happen to be an artist. Like that is just what I love doing and what I feel like I'm on this earth to do. And so that's what I use to convey my message. But yeah, I think we do have a responsibility as artists to talk about what is most meaningful to us and what's authentic to us and what is important to us. Because if we're really digging deep and creating work that matters to us most, that is what is going to speak to viewers the most, I think.
Okay, thank you. So here's another question. Would you say that I find this really interesting. Would you say that your art is in the same tradition as artists from previous generations who have also used landscape as an important part of their work? For example, Cézanne or Constable. And do you think perhaps we should be looking at their work in a different way?
Sure. I mean, there's always different ways to look at all these works in our canon of art history. I think it just shows us how drawn to the natural world we are as humans, from the very beginning of time and the very beginning of art making. We have been expressing the natural world and showing, and just making different depictions of it. And so I think it's just like, it resonates with me because it's an example of how much we are so connected and how much we need it to survive, and how therefore important it is for us to be protecting it.
Okay, and what do you hope that people will feel when they see your work?
I hope people will feel a sense of awe in the way that I have. I hope that they fall in love with these places as I have. That's why I focus on the beauty, as I mentioned earlier, because because I'm a positive person, really. I just think I focus on the positive. I try to move forward in the world in a positive way. That's just the way my brain works. I think it's also important to see the destruction of what's going on, the wildfires, the floods. But that's just not what I focus on in my work personally, because I think there's a room for all of it. But the way I'm going to speak and show my work most authentically is from a positive perspective. And so instead of, trying to scare people, which I think a lot of destructive imagery can do, or what a lot of scary news reports we are being bombarded with constantly on a daily basis, it can paralyze us and make us feel kind of hopeless and like, well, what am I going to do to fix this most massive crisis situation? And so it kind of makes us feel unempowered. So I want my work to empower people. I want it to inspire people, to help them move forward from a place of love and of inspiration, and of a place of wanting to protect this, and understanding that we all need this planet to survive.
Okay, thank you. So keep the questions coming, people in the audience. It would be great to hear your questions if you have anything you'd like to ask Zaria. I have another question from myself, which is that I'm a professor in the zoology department, so I spend a lot of time thinking about animals and how they are responding to climate change. We have a lot of evidence that animals have been moving in places they didn't used to go, shifting their ranges, and for some groups of species, climate change is a real problem. You're probably thinking about the icy landscapes of the world. I'm more often thinking about the more temperate landscapes or the dry landscapes. But so my question is, while you were doing these expeditions and flying over these icy landscapes and places where I can see in this kind of cryospheric view of the world that you've had, did you see animals? And if you did, why did you choose not to include them?
Yes, I've seen many animals on these expeditions. But I love seeing animals. It's always like so exciting and so fun and such a wonderful opportunity. I try to also stay away from them too, because I don't want to disturb them too much. But if they're curious, you let them come to you, kind of thing. But yeah, I do get this question a lot, and I just find that for me, like if I were to add an animal into my drawings, it suddenly becomes cheesy. It's like, I'd rather that be a photograph, because it's like, it's just too good to be true. If there's like a polar bear on top of the iceberg that I'm drawing, you know, it just feels like made up. Whereas if it's a photograph, it's like, wow, that scene really happened. That's beautiful. I mean, it's funny in a way, like I'm just recalling that I used to tone down the colors in the ice, because the first few times I visited the polar regions, I was so amazed by the saturation of blues that you see. It's like they are blues that you don't see anywhere else in the world, and it's just truly incredible. There's a scientific reason for, you know, that the way that light is absorbed in our eyes and all that stuff. But I toned it down and I was drawing them more gray. Like I was taking out the saturation of the color because I just felt like people weren't going to think that it was real and that I just made it up, you know. A few years late into that, I was like, no, I'm not going to do this anymore. I need to actually show them what I saw. That I think I find that to be more important. And then it was just a hard process of finding the pastels that could that could show the saturation, which actually just is impossible, but I do my best. So anyway, back to the animals. I just feel like that is better represented in photographs for me and the way that I draw, than it would be in my work.
Yeah, you've actually answered another question that we have there, because someone was asking was noting that the colours in the Lincoln Sea painting are incredibly vivid, and asking whether that was a representation of what you saw or whether you embellished them for artistic effect. I think I know the answer.
Yeah, if anything, they are more toned down than they actually are in the real world. It's just completely insane. The bright turquoise, the like purple blue, deep blues. It's because, especially from the aerial views, you're seeing like glacial lakes and glacial rivers and glacial ponds. And so all of that is still sitting on top of, that's all in ice. Everything you're looking at is in ice. So it's all has a background of snow and white, you know, and ice or clear ice. And so you're not looking down into the deep ocean. You're looking at like puddles, essentially from a really wide view on top of the ice. And so, you know, I'm not the best scientist. I've tried to explain this so many times, but I still don't totally understand it. But it's like the ice, I think, absorbs all red cones, like color cones, when you look at it from your eye. And so something about the way that we see it with our human eyes, it is what like brings out that blue and makes it just look so totally electric. It's just unbelievable.
Yeah, it seems to be firing energy out at you, doesn't it, when you see it glowing? Or
Yeah,
amazing. It's a real privilege to see those icy landscapes. I think not many people get to see them. So the question from Karen, given how much emotion and passion you obviously put into your drawings, do you find it hard to part with them when it comes to selling them?
It kills me. It's so hard. It's so hard. I'm like crying every time a piece leaves my studio. Yeah, I call them my babies. They're like my babies fleeing the nest. You know, I spend so much time on them, and it's such a wonderful opportunity for me because like when I'm there experiencing the landscape, it's such a brief moment. It's so quick. And even if I spend a month in the landscape, you know, there's these brief moments of just incredible beauty that are so fleeting and constantly shifting and changing. And it's like it's like a really almost selfish, but like indulgent is a better word, indulgent experience to like come back to my studio and get to extend that moment out into weeks and months and just explore all of the intricacies in a way that I wasn't able to do in the moment on site. And so they're so meaningful to me. I mean, it takes me months to finish a piece, and I get to look at it every day and live with it every day. And then it just is so sad when they go and it's a blank wall. And oftentimes I never get to see them again. You know, yeah, it's hard. Usually they go to my next solo show and I get to see them one more time, but behind glass in a frame at my solo show with like a million people in the room. So it's like, you know, it's hectic and it's a lot. And I try to go back to the gallery as much as I can while it's up. But once they're sold to collectors, they're usually in private spaces. So this is just like such an exciting and wonderful opportunity for me. I'm so grateful to Kelvin, who I think is there in the audience with you tonight, that he has been so completely generous with his piece. He's purchased it. This is his. And yet he he, wants what I want, which is for more eyeballs to get to see it, more people to get to experience it. This particular piece that is hanging there that you all get to see, it was the piece that took me longer than anything else. I spent a whole year on it. Partly that was because I had to take breaks and work on other pieces, which I normally don't do. I usually focus on one at a time. But with this one, it was the most detailed and intricate drawing I have ever attempted. And it was hard. It was like it would kill me at times. And so I had to take breaks. But it took me the longest of anything. And so I'm so proud of it. And it means so much to me. And I am just especially happy that this particular piece is getting to travel and getting to be seen by lots of people before, it eventually goes into Kelvin's home, if that ever happens. But so yeah, it's a real treat for me, and hopefully I'll get to one of these places and get to see it revisited again myself.
So Dave is wondering, now that you've told us how hard it is to part with each painting, do you go back and paint and redo multiple versions of the same thing, like artists like Monk and other artists have done?
Yeah, I don't do it anymore. I did in the first few years of working, especially because I would start by making a small piece, like small by like 3 by 2 feet or something, to kind of test out a new. With every piece, I always try to learn something new, and so I'm always looking for new textures and surfaces and depths to learn how to draw within the ice. And side note, that's why I am just still obsessed with ice for so many years, because it just continues. There's so much more for me to learn. I'm never going to be done learning. And so I used to do small pieces first to see how it would turn out. And then if I really liked it, I would do a bigger version. So yeah. And then I kind of got a bad taste in my mouth because I had one client who purchased a piece. I forget exactly what happened. It was so long ago, but they purchased the smaller version, and then I made a bigger version because I loved it so much. And then they got really mad that there was another one. And it's not, artists have been doing this for forever, for all of time. It doesn't make her work any less valuable. And also she wasn't planning on selling it. So there was no reason why she should have been bothered by this anyway. It's just like, but it just made me worry. And also, so I think that just kind of started the bad taste in my mouth. But now I just feel like I always want to learn something new with a new piece. So it feels like kind of a waste of time to do something twice. I just go big. I go big, and if it doesn't turn out the way I had hoped, like, fine, I learned something and someone will like it.
So here you're starting to answer the next question we've got, which is from Sarah, who says, by the way, amazing work, Zaria, and wonders what type of pastel do you use? Do you use chalk or oil pastel?
Chalk pastel, soft
Chalk
pastel.
pastels, okay. So chalk pastels,
Yeah.
and then she's asking, is the scale of the work, the size of the thing, is that important for conveying the sense of awe in the viewer? Is that part of it for you, or is it the complexity and the detail?
It's both. But I'll start just by saying I pretty much exclusively use Unison Color soft pastels. They're really, really great. It's a wonderful small family-owned business that's actually outside. It's in the UK. It's just outside London, I think a couple of hours. And yeah, it's very important that the size, I'm always trying to go bigger. I'm always trying to go as big as I can possibly manage with my small size and my, the limitations of the walls that I have to work on. And I am currently in the process of building a new studio for myself just down the road from my house. So right now I'm like temporarily in my living room, which is not ideal. And, I'm working on a pretty huge piece, if you can see it in the background there, but that's,
Gosh, yes, we can.
That's the biggest I can do. And like, it's breaking my back because I'm having to sit on a chair and I'm having to crouch on the floor to do the bottom half. And, so yeah, scale is important because I just want to always want to draw as close to a 1:1 ratio of the subject matter as possible. So if I'm drawing a glacier, there's no way I can draw the size of the glacier. So I'm just going to go as big as I possibly can. And the point is to try and transport viewers to that place in time that I experienced. And so if I can recreate it as precisely as possible, all the details matter, and the scale really matters, because that's partly what, really creates that sense of awe.
Okay, thank you. So a question from Peter. We've got just 5 minutes left now, but the questions are coming thick and fast now, which is great. Thank you everyone who's putting them in. Have you thought about exploring other areas such as the tropics where climate changes are also having effect?
Yes, absolutely. And I've spent a lot of time in the Maldives, which are the lowest lying island nation in the world. So the idea for that was kind of following the meltwater from Greenland, which had been my trip before, to the Maldives, a place where the sea levels are rising at a very rapid pace and, possibly within a decade will completely disappear. And so the drawings, some of which you saw in the slideshow, are just waves, water, lapping up against the shore. Again, I really try to focus on the beauty as opposed to the devastation. So I'm not drawing the damaged coastlines. I choose to focus on the water. And yeah, I would really love to get back to that type of series. I went back to the South Pacific once with the intention of getting to draw what is it called, one of the next lowest lying island nations. I'm forgetting what it's called at the moment. I want to say Tuvalu, but I feel like that's a place in Greenland anyway, in the South Pacific. And our ship ended up getting rerouted because I was on, like, I had sort of tagged along as an artist in residence on a National Geographic cruise, and people wanted to go snorkeling, and the coral had all been bleached where we were supposed to go. So another example of climate change. But unfortunately I didn't get to go there. So yeah, there's lots of places I would love to travel to. I have a long list.
Okay, well, that's great to hear. So Karen's thanking Selwyn for thanking Kelvin for loaning the drawing to Selwyn again. We're all very excited to have it. So thanks from us too. So I think this is going to be the final question. Having visited so many places around the world, which few of us get to see firsthand, are you optimistic about the future and our ability to slow down what's happening to our climate?
It depends on the day. I do try really hard to remain optimistic, and the thing that kind of keeps me there is just the bigger picture. Like when I zoom out, and especially when I zoom out of the United States, the bigger picture is that we are moving in the right direction. And, I started this work, depicting climate change in my work in 2007. And we were not talking about climate change every day in the news as we are now. Most people didn't even know what climate change was. Global warming was like this sort of distant concept that some of us had heard of, and including myself. But traveling to a place like Greenland, which was the first place I went to see glaciers and icebergs with my family, it was a topic of discussion every day. And the Inuits, the people who live there, were having to adapt their lifestyle practically on a daily basis to adapt to the changes and to survive. And all the people coming to visit were newscasters coming to write about it, government officials coming to learn, and scientists coming to study the ice. So that's really the trip that like opened my eyes to the crisis and made me shift my focus very specifically towards climate change. And so I've been doing this work for a long time, and I've seen a massive shift in the right direction. Ultimately, like, we have a lot of big back steps, but ultimately, like, renewable energy is becoming so much cheaper, and we, at least as our nation, most nations move towards the money. It's like whatever's cheaper is what we're gonna use. And so oil is just becoming like not it just too expensive in comparison. And so when that shift really happens, and the lobbying stops. I mean, obviously we need whatever. I'm not going to get into the politics right now, but we need some major shifts, and we need to do them faster. So it's really just a matter of like the speed at which we continue, and how much sort of destruction we will see along the way, and how much we will need to adapt. But I do really, on the bigger picture, feel hopeful, and I think we will figure it out eventually. It's just a matter of how much damage we do in the meantime.
Well, thank you for ending it on a positive note there. It's great to hear your optimism. So I'm going to close the webinar. Thank you so much, Zaria. It's been really fascinating and insightful for me to hear straight from you, the artist, about your work and your experience and how you create those works. Thank you so much for spending time talking to us today, your afternoon. Also, thanks to Kelvin Chu for catalysing this whole conversation and giving those of us who are here in Cambridge a chance to see one of these incredible works. Got us all talking about climate change. So thanks very much indeed. And yeah, it's been a pleasure to have you. Goodbye.
Thank you so much. This has been wonderful. Thank you to the college for having me. Thank you, Lynn, for hosting, and thank you, Kelvin, for allowing this piece to stay here for a year and getting everyone to allowing a space and time for everyone to see it. I really appreciate all of you for this. Thank you so much.